You live believing that chance governs your life, when in reality, every coincidence is a secret code written for you. Jung called it synchronicity. Neville Goddard called it the bridge of incidents, two distinct languages for the same enigma. Invisible patterns that shape your destiny without you realizing it. When someone appears at the exact instant that you think of them, when a symbol repeats itself until it haunts you, this is reality responding to your internal state. And when you sustain the feeling as real, the incidents align with surgical precision. While the majority sleeps, imprisoned by the random, some have already deciphered this silent dialogue with the universe and have completely transformed their lives. The detail that you ignore is the same one that controls your trajectory. With every coincidence that you dismiss, you lose a direct message from the intelligence that organizes everything. And the sooner you learn to read these signs, the faster you'll realize life is not a spectacle for spectators. It is a secret game, and you are inside it.
The majority of people live a fundamental lie. They believe that the events of life are random, when in reality, each moment is a precise response to the internal states that we cultivate. Carl Jung documented this phenomenon scientifically. Neville Goddard proved it through practical experiments with thousands of people. In 1961, Goddard published The Law and the Promise, presenting verifiable cases of individuals who discovered how to operate this law. There is a continuous conversation happening between human consciousness and what we call external reality. Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, events connected by meaning, not by causality. What quantum physics discovered decades later, these men had already mapped. The observer selects which version of reality to collapse into experience. When you sustain a specific mental state with genuine emotional intensity, the universe reorganizes the external events to correspond to this internal state. The patterns are everywhere. You think of someone you haven't seen in years, and the person appears. You dream of a specific symbol, and it emerges repeatedly in the physical world. You feel a deep need, and someone offers exactly what you need without you asking. These are evidence of an organizing intelligence responding to your states of consciousness. Goddard demonstrated that when someone assumes the feeling of the wish fulfilled, feels viscerally as if it were already real, a bridge of incidents begins to form. Apparently, disconnected events align. The right people appear, opportunities emerge, obstacles disappear. You are already operating this law unconsciously, creating synchronicities based on mental states of which you aren't even aware. When you learn to recognize these patterns, when you begin to read the messages that the universe constantly sends through meaningful coincidences, life stops being something that happens to you and reveals itself as something that happens through you. In October of 1913, Carl Jung was overcome by a vision that disturbed him deeply. He saw a monstrous yellow wave covering all of Europe from the North Sea to the Alps. The wave carried debris of civilization and thousands of drowned bodies. The vision repeated itself several times during the following 2 weeks, each time more intense. Jung documented everything in his personal diaries, convinced that he was on the verge of a psychosis. In July of 1914, the First World War exploded. The yellow waves were mustard gas, the thousands of dead, a reality that would extend for 4 years. Jung had captured a pattern forming in the collective consciousness before its physical manifestation. He understood then that certain individuals function as antennas for massive changes that are still organizing in the invisible field of reality. Neville Goddard identified the same phenomenon operating on an individual scale. Imagine the following situation: a person who repeatedly dreamed of a specific house, the color, the shape, the garden, every detail vividly clear. Months later, driving through a city that she had never visited, she found the exact house from the dream for sale. The owners had decided to sell only 3 days before, but the decision had been forming for months due to a job transfer not yet confirmed. What Jung and Goddard discovered independently is that future events project shadows backward in time. These shadows appear as premonitions, premonitory dreams, and sudden knowledge. Human consciousness can capture these temporal ripples when it is in certain receptive states. Goddard called this process the bridge of incidents. When you fix your consciousness on a specific outcome, a sequence of events begins to organize in the invisible field. These events seem disconnected on the surface. A person mentions something casually, you see a specific advertisement, you receive an unexpected phone call, you find a particular book. Each incident seems insignificant in isolation. Together, they form a precise bridge between where you are and where you have fixed your consciousness. Neville Goddard relates the case of a man who specifically visualized being in Barbados. He had no money for the trip. 2 weeks later, a former employer sought him out with an offer of temporary work. The job required presence in Barbados, with all expenses paid. The employer had decided to look for him after dreaming about him 3 nights in a row, exactly when the man began his visualizations. The invisible patterns manifest through specific synchronicities. Objects break at precise moments, signaling the end of cycles. Doors that were locked open inexplicably when a new phase is ready to begin. Animals appear repeatedly, the same bird, the same butterfly, marking important moments of transition. Jung documented hundreds of these events. A patient resistant to treatment dreamed of a golden scarab, an Egyptian symbol of rebirth. During the following session, while she was relating the dream, a rare golden beetle knocked on the office window. Jung opened the window, caught the insect, and handed it to her, saying, "Here is your scarab." The synchronicity broke her rational resistance. The psychological transformation that had been blocked for months occurred in days. Goddard taught that these patterns respond to precise laws. First, you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not vague visualization, but the complete sensory experience of already possessing what you desire. Second, you maintain this state mainly before sleeping, when the conscious mind relaxes its control. Third, you observe without anxiety while the bridge of incidents forms. Anxiety interrupts the process. When you obsessively check if it's working, you transmit doubt, and the universe responds with more reasons to doubt. When you rest in the knowledge that it is done, the synchronicities accelerate. People appear with resources. Opportunities arise from unexpected directions. Obstacles that seem permanent simply dissolve. The invisible patterns are constantly communicating. That sudden impulse to call someone, the person needed it. That inexplicable feeling to avoid a certain path, an accident happened minutes later. That absolute knowledge that something specific will occur, and it occurs exactly as you knew. You have already experienced this. You already knew that the phone was going to ring before it rang. You have already thought of someone who appeared next. You have already felt that something important was about to happen, and it happened. These moments reveal your natural participation in the cosmic conversation. The universe is constantly signaling what is forming in the invisible field. The question is to develop the sensitivity to read these signals consistently. Freud was elaborating his arguments against paranormal phenomena when something extraordinary interrupted his materialist logic. In March of 1909, Jung visited Freud in Vienna. While they were discussing paranormal phenomena, Freud maintained his materialist position, rejecting any validity in these phenomena. During Freud's arguments, Jung began to experience an intense physical sensation of heat concentrated in his diaphragm, which became progressively stronger. The sensation grew until it became unbearable. At the moment of greatest intensity, a loud, dry crack exploded from Freud's bookshelf. Both jumped from their chairs. Jung, still feeling the strange heat, said calmly, "This is an example of what we are discussing. And to prove that it is a genuine paranormal phenomenon, I predict that a second crack will occur immediately." Seconds later, another identical crack sounded from the same bookshelf. Freud turned pale. Jung documented that he saw the look of horror on Freud's face. The horror of seeing his materialist model of the world crack, along with the sounds from the bookshelf. The relationship between them never fully recovered from that moment. Jung had demonstrated that intense internal states produce measurable external effects. Neville Goddard mapped exactly how this mechanism operates. In The Law and the Promise, he establishes that feeling is the secret of creation. The imagination provides the mold, but the feeling provides the power. When you combine a clear mental image with the visceral sensation of its reality, you activate the mechanism that produces corresponding synchronicities. To illustrate the principle, imagine a woman who wants her brother to come home after years of estrangement. She didn't try to convince him. Instead, every night before sleeping, she would lie down imagining that he was sleeping in the room next door. She heard his breathing. She felt his presence. She experienced the relief and the joy of having him home. After 3 weeks of this practice, the brother called, announcing that he had decided to return. He reported having begun to feel an inexplicable attraction to home exactly when she started the practice. The universe responds to what you feel in the depths of your being. Superficial thoughts produce nothing. Deep feelings reorganize reality. Goddard discovered that the emotional state that you occupy consistently determines the types of synchronicities that appear in your life. Consider this example: a businessman on the verge of bankruptcy. Instead of despair, he cultivated the feeling of prosperity. Every night he counted imaginary money, felt the texture of the bills, and experienced financial security. He didn't visualize vaguely, he felt specifically. In 2 weeks, an old client who owed a sum considered lost appeared voluntarily to pay the debt with interest. The client reported having been haunted by an inexplicable impulse to settle this pending matter. The phenomenon operates through a specific principle. Your emotional states transmit frequencies that the unified field of consciousness responds to by organizing corresponding events. Sustained anger attracts conflicts. Genuine gratitude attracts more reasons for gratitude. Deep fear manifests exactly what is feared. Jung discovered this clinically. Patients who carried deep guilt attracted coincidental external punishments. Patients who cultivated genuine self-acceptance found unexpected acceptance in the world. The patterns were too consistent to be random. The external world functioned as a mirror of the internal world, but an active mirror that organizes events to correspond to the reflection. Goddard went beyond observation to practical application. He taught that the ideal moment to impress the subconscious mind with specific feelings is the state between waking and sleeping, what neuroscience today calls the hypnagogic state. In this state, that instant when you are almost asleep but still conscious, the brainwaves slow down, the critical mind relaxes, and the feeling can be planted directly in the substrate of consciousness that organizes reality. Neville relates in a passage of his book the story of a secretary who used this technique to manifest a specific promotion. Every night, she fell asleep feeling like the executive she wanted to be, not hoping or wishing, but experiencing. She felt the weight of the responsibility, the respect of colleagues, and the satisfaction of the position. In 6 weeks, a corporate reorganization created exactly the position she had felt, and she was the unanimous choice to fill it. The time between the sustained feeling and the external manifestation varies. The more natural and complete the feeling, the faster the response. The more doubt or contradiction you carry, the slower and more distorted the manifestation. Goddard discovered that most people sabotage the process by feeling the opposite of what they desire during the day, cancelling the nighttime work. The feeling must be protected and sustained. When you plant a seed, you don't dig it up daily to check if it's growing. When you imprint a feeling on the substrate of consciousness, you must trust the process while the bridge of incidents forms. The synchronicities that appear are confirmations that the process is working, signs that the universe is responding to your dominant internal state. Jung drew his first mandala in 1916 without fully understanding what he was creating. Circles within circles, geometric patterns emerging spontaneously from his hand. Weeks later, Richard Wilhelm sent him a manuscript of the Chinese text, The Secret of the Golden Flower, for translation. The ancient text contained the exact same mandala that Jung had drawn. He had never seen the manuscript before. Wilhelm didn't know that Jung was drawing mandalas. This event crystallized for Jung the understanding that specific symbols exist independently in the field of collective consciousness. They emerge spontaneously in different cultures, epochs, and individual minds because they are fundamental patterns through which consciousness organizes and communicates itself. Richard Wilhelm, translator of the I Ching for the West, documented thousands of consultations where the oracle's Chinese responses were impossibly precise. The mechanism is revealing. You formulate a question and throw coins. The resulting configuration points to a specific hexagram among 64 possible ones. Jung used the I Ching regularly, disturbed by its ability to answer complex questions through apparently random symbols. The reason it works lies in the nature of symbols as bridges between dimensions of consciousness. Goddard discovered that when someone visualizes with emotional clarity, corresponding symbols begin to appear in the physical world as confirmations. To understand the mechanism, imagine a woman repeatedly visualizing a specific ring, gold with an oval blue stone. She drew every detail, memorized every curve. 3 months later, in a distant city, a man she had just met pulled a box from his pocket, saying that he had been carrying that object for months, waiting to find the right person. It was the exact ring. Numbers function as codes of direct communication. Repeated numerical sequences are not pareidolia. They are specific frequencies signaling alignment or misalignment. You wake up at 3:33 for weeks in a row. You look at the clock repeatedly at 11:11. The receipts total $44.44 without you calculating. Each numerical pattern carries specific information about the state of the bridge between your internal and external world. Jung meticulously documented how animals appear as symbolic messengers at precise moments. A patient resistant to profound changes received visits from a specific crow whenever she considered abandoning therapy. The crow, an alchemical symbol of transformation through darkness, appeared exclusively at these moments of resistance. When she finally crossed through her psychological barriers, the visits ceased permanently. The materialization of symbols follows precise laws. Goddard discovered that visualization combined with genuine feeling produces cascades of symbolic confirmations. A teacher who imagined herself living in California began to find golden bears everywhere. The state symbol appeared in contexts impossible to orchestrate consciously. Magazines forgotten in cafes, store windows that changed when she passed, television channels that showed documentaries about California bears at the exact moment she turned on the device. 2 months later, a chain of apparently disconnected events led her there. Physical objects respond to deep internal changes by breaking, appearing, or disappearing at symbolically significant moments. Clocks stop at the exact moment of important decisions. Photographs fall from the wall when relationships internally end. Objects lost for years appear when you are ready for what they represent. Words emerge as modern oracles through conversations accidentally overheard, phrases on billboards that answer internal questions, books that fall open to specific pages. The field of consciousness organizes these events with surgical precision. You question a decision and immediately hear a stranger say the exact answer on the phone. It's not a coincidence, it's communication. Dreams operate as the most direct interface of this symbolic field. Goddard documented people who dreamed complete addresses of houses they later bought, detailed faces of future spouses years before meeting them, and specific scenes they later lived identically. A businessman repeatedly dreamed of a golden lion without understanding the meaning. Weeks later, he received a transformative proposal from the Golden Lion Corporation, a company whose existence he was unaware of during the dreams. Symbols transcend linear time because they exist in the field where past, present, and future are simultaneous. Your consciousness focused on a specific outcome activates corresponding symbols that begin to appear as cosmic breadcrumbs, guiding you through the bridge of incidents. Each symbolic appearance calibrates your trajectory, confirming alignment or signaling necessary corrections. Learning the symbolic language of the universe transforms the perception of reality. Random events reveal themselves as precise communications. Coincidences show themselves as confirmations. Obstacles appear as symbolic redirections to better paths. You realize you are in constant dialogue with an intelligence that responds through symbols, transforming life into a living text where each element carries meaning and direction. Specific people appear in your life at the exact moment when your internal states summon them. Goddard discovered that each significant individual we meet emerges as an external manifestation of assumptions we carry internally. The mechanism is precise. You sustain a deep belief about yourself or about life, and the universe organizes encounters that confirm that belief. A lonely widow began to internally assume that she was loved and valued. She didn't wait for external evidence. She assumed the state first. In 3 weeks, she received a letter from a childhood friend who had dreamed of her repeatedly and felt the irresistible impulse to reconnect. In the same period, 2 other distant friends made contact independently. None knew of the others. All reported the same inexplicable compulsion to seek her out. The principle, "everyone is you pushed out," means that each person in your experience represents an aspect of your consciousness manifested externally. The critical boss mirrors your internal self-criticism. The loving partner reflects your self-worth. The treacherous friend manifests your beliefs about trust. Changing external encounters requires a change in the internal state that produces them. Jung observed this phenomenon in his patients for decades. Women who experienced paternal abandonment consistently attracted emotionally unavailable men. Men with a fear of intimacy found only partners who confirmed that relationships were dangerous. The patterns were mathematical in their precision. When the internal state changed through therapeutic work, the type of person attracted changed correspondingly. Goddard went beyond psychological observation. He taught specific techniques to summon people through assumed states. A salesman consistently visualized ideal clients, not specific people, but the type of interaction he desired. He imagined easy conversations, quick decisions, mutual satisfaction. His revenue tripled in 2 months. The difficult clients disappeared. People who fit perfectly into his visualization began to seek him out. Love at first sight operates through this mechanism. 2 people recognize each other instantly because each one is manifesting something that the other was internally summoning. The magnetic attraction they feel is the field of consciousness, signaling the alignment of complementary internal patterns. That's why relationships started in different states of consciousness produce drastically different results. Imagine a person who found herself desperate to find a job. The more desperate she became, the more rejections she received. Each interviewer seemed to capture her need and retreat. But when she changed internally, assumed the feeling of being wanted and valuable, the same types of interviewers began to respond differently. In 2 weeks, she received 3 offers. The interviewers were different people, but all manifested the same pattern: immediate recognition of her value. Synchronicities of encounter follow identifiable patterns. You think intensely about someone you haven't seen in years, and the person appears. This occurs because your intense thought creates a disturbance in the field that the other person registers unconsciously as an impulse to make contact. Goddard discovered that visualizing specific conversations with absent people frequently resulted in those people initiating contact with the exact words visualized. Strangers appear as angels when you sustain certain states. A woman lost in a foreign city, instead of panic, maintained the calm certainty of being safe and guided. A local approached offering help before she asked. He took her exactly where she needed to go, refused payment, and disappeared. She discovered later that he had changed his usual route that day because of a hunch. Toxic relationships persist because we internally feed the state that sustains them. Goddard taught that trying to change the other person is useless. The transformation happens when you change the assumption about the relationship. A wife consistently visualized her alcoholic husband as sober, kind, and present. She didn't criticize him or demand change. She maintained the image internally. He sought help voluntarily after repeatedly dreaming that he was losing his family. Professional encounters respond to the same principle. Assuming that you work with competent and collaborative people magnetizes exactly those people into your orbit. Assuming that business is difficult and people are dishonest guarantees finding confirmatory evidence. The business world doesn't change. Your frequency determines which aspect of it you experience. Crowds respond to individual internal states. Goddard documented a speaker who, before each presentation, assumed that the audience was receptive, intelligent, and eager to learn. His lectures were consistently well received. When he occasionally forgot this internal preparation and went on stage anxious, the same presentation received a lukewarm response from the audience. Every significant encounter in your life is responding to a transmission that you are emitting from your deepest state of consciousness. People appear to fulfill roles in the drama that you are internally scripting. Changing the cast requires rewriting the internal script. When you assume a new state with sufficient conviction, the universe reorganizes encounters to correspond, bringing people who confirm your new story about yourself and about life. Quantum physics has experimentally demonstrated what mystics have known for millennia. The act of observation determines what manifests in physical reality. In the double-slit experiment, electrons behave as probability waves until they are observed. At the moment of observation, the wave function collapses, and the electron assumes a definite position. Your consciousness operates by the same principle on a macroscopic scale. Werner Heisenberg, one of the fathers of quantum mechanics, stated that what we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning. Jung and Goddard understood this decades before scientific formalization. Each visible synchronicity is the collapse of infinite possibilities into a specific event, determined by the conscious observer. The most dramatic case documented by Jung occurred during a therapy session. The patient, extremely rational and resistant, was relating a dream about a golden scarab, an Egyptian symbol of rebirth. At that exact moment, a rare golden beetle, Satonia aurata, knocked on the office window. Jung opened the window, caught the insect, and handed it to the patient. The synchronicity was the visible collapse of a specific possibility among infinite ones, orchestrated by the psychological necessity of the moment. Goddard mapped the exact mechanism your focused imagination selects which timeline you experience. There are infinite versions of each moment. The version you experience is determined by the state of consciousness you occupy. An architect repeatedly visualized a specific project that didn't yet exist, every detail, every line. Months later, a client sought him out with a request that corresponded exactly to his visualization, including details the client couldn't have known. Premonitory dreams reveal this non-linear nature of consciousness. You dream of a specific scene and then live it. The dream didn't predict the future. Your consciousness accessed the field where all moments coexist and selected that possibility to collapse into experience. Goddard documented hundreds of cases where people dreamed of specific events that they later created through maintaining the feeling of the dream. The revision technique operates through this quantum principle. Before sleeping, you mentally review events of the day, but you reimagine them as you would have liked them to have occurred. A woman revised every night an argument with her husband, reimagining harmony instead of conflict. The husband began to change without her saying anything. He reported having confused memories of the argument, remembering it as less severe than it had been. The revision was literally rewriting the past in the quantum field of consciousness. Living from the end, Goddard's central technique, means mentally occupying the desired future state until it collapses into present reality. An unknown musician imagined himself receiving applause in a specific theater he had never visited. He visualized every detail, the stage, the lights, the sensation. 6 months later, a series of coincidences led him to play in exactly that theater, exactly as he had imagined. Time doesn't work as we imagine. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously in the quantum field. Your focused consciousness determines which configuration of these infinite possibilities crystallizes into your linear experience. That's why you can change the past by changing how you observe it now, and you can experience the future by assuming its reality in the present. Goddard discovered that the state of consciousness occupied before sleeping is particularly powerful for selecting realities. In the hypnagogic state, the conscious mind relaxes its control, and you directly access the mechanism that collapses possibilities. A woman in debt fell asleep every night feeling prosperous, imaginarily holding checks of high values. In 3 months, an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative she didn't even know existed materialized exactly the values she had imagined. Doubt and contradiction create distorted or incomplete collapses. When you oscillate between states of consciousness, reality manifests this oscillation as contradictory and confusing events. Clarity and consistency in the internal state produce clean and rapid manifestations. A businessman maintained absolute certainty about a specific contract despite all contrary evidence. The favored competitor inexplicably withdrew at the last hour. Observation changes the observed even retroactively. Quantum delayed choice experiments prove that decisions in the present affect past states of particles. Goddard applied this practically. By observing any situation from the point of view of the desired outcome already realized, you reorganize the entire chain of causality that leads to it. Each moment contains infinite possibilities, superposed, waiting for the collapse determined by your conscious observation. Synchronicities are the visible evidence of this collapse happening, the universe reorganizing itself to correspond to the state your consciousness is selecting. You are not watching reality unfold. You are actively selecting which reality to experience through each act of conscious observation. life responds not to what you desire, but to what you assume as real in the deep field of your observing consciousness. Synchronicities are not all the same. Each type carries a specific message, operates through distinct mechanisms, and requires different responses. Goddard identified 4 main categories that the universe uses to communicate with human consciousness. Warning synchronicities emerge as interruptions in the normal flow of events. 3 appointments cancelled in a row with the same client. The car that won't start precisely on the day of that trip. The important document that disappears before signing. These events are not random obstacles. They are the field of consciousness signaling that you are moving against the natural current of what is trying to emerge. Jung documented that consistently ignoring these warnings leads to more dramatic interruptions. A woman ignored multiple signs about a business partnership, documents that disappeared, pens that failed at signing, and sudden illnesses before meetings. She signed anyway. The partner defrauded her in 6 months. Confirmation synchronicities operate inversely. Doors open without effort. The right people appear with perfect timing. Resources emerge exactly when needed. Goddard discovered that these synchronicities accelerate when you are aligned with what he called the path of promise. An inventor worked on a patent for months, facing constant obstacles. He changed his approach, and immediately 3 independent investors sought him out in the same week. None knew of the others. All had sensed that he had something valuable. Prophetic synchronicities show literal glimpses of the future through dreams, visions, or sudden knowledge. They differ from creative imagination because they arrive spontaneously, carrying specific details that you couldn't have consciously constructed. A secretary dreamed of a specific address, 1346 Boulevard West, in a city she had never visited. 2 years later, an unexpected transfer took her to that city. The available apartment had exactly that address. Goddard taught that these prophetic synchronicities increase when you develop the habit of observing without anxiety, allowing the field of consciousness to communicate without ego interference. Manifestation synchronicities are your internal states taking direct external form. You sustain a specific feeling, and the universe organizes its materialization through paths that the logical mind could never trace. Imagine this scenario. A teacher consistently visualized a specific value, $50,000, without determining the source. He maintained the feeling of already possessing this amount. His distant uncle, with whom he hadn't spoken in decades, died, leaving him exactly $50,000. The will had been written in the week when the visualizations began. The fundamental principle that Goddard discovered: signs follow, they never precede. You don't wait for signs to act. You assume the desired state first, then synchronicities appear, confirming or correcting your trajectory. People waste years waiting for signs to begin, when signs only appear after you establish a clear direction through your assumed state of consciousness. Repeated numbers carry coded messages about your current alignment. Constantly seeing 222 indicates that your visualizations are materializing. Continue maintaining the state. 555 signals, profound changes organizing in the invisible field. 999 marks the conclusions of cycles. These numbers appear at precise moments. You wake up exactly at 4:44. The receipt totals $33.33. The important document has 777 words. The field is constantly communicating through this numerical language. Casual encounters are never casual. Each person who crosses your path significantly is responding to a summons from your state of consciousness. The stranger who mentions exactly the book you need to read. The friend who calls with the solution to your problem without knowing you had that problem. The specialist who appears precisely when you need that specific expertise. Obstacles are redirections in disguise. Goddard discovered that when something that seems perfect becomes impossible to achieve, there is always something better organizing. A woman lost the house of her dreams to another buyer. Devastated, she still maintained the feeling of living in the perfect house. 3 months later, she found a superior house in all aspects for the same price, in a location she didn't even know she desired until she saw it. Distinguishing between psychological projection and genuine synchronicity requires practice. True synchronicities carry a numinous quality. You know in the moment that something significant is happening. They appear with timing impossible to orchestrate consciously. They carry information you didn't possess. They produce measurable changes in external reality. Each synchronicity is the universe actively participating in your journey, responding to the states you sustain, guiding you through symbols and events. You have never been alone in this game. The intelligence that organizes synchronicities is constantly available, waiting only for you to learn its language and consciously participate in the conversation. Every change begins with the understanding of your role as co-creator, and the only way to connect with this divine intelligence is through meditation. We have developed a set of audio tools to help you access this higher state of consciousness. To learn more and get immediate access, click on the link on the screen or in the comments. If this video resonated with you, write in the comments, "It made sense to me."